7 o'clock. We'll try and be as expedient as possible given the circumstances. So I'll call this meeting to order officially. We'd like to acknowledge that Concordia University is on traditional territory of the Ganingahaga, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. The Concordia Student Union recognizes and respects the Ganingahaga as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters on which we meet today. Okay, the sheet's gone around. There's not an approval of the agenda point for a special council meeting. Maybe the way to do it procedurally then would be to table the points that we're not going to be addressing. It starts off with point 3, which is special bylaw housekeeping changes.
So I motion to table.
Okay, great. Seconded Ben. Is anyone opposed to tabling the point on special bylaw I? Okay, if not, then we can proceed to point number 4. We'd wanted to address point number 4. This is financial regulation changes, I believe. Yeah. Okay, great. Heather, I imagine you want to speak to this?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I've been talking about doing financial regulation changes since the beginning of the year. There were a lot of financial reg changes that came in May 31st of last year that we used for the fiscal year this year. Now we're coming to an end, and so I thought it was appropriate to actually change them to match the practical realities of the procedures that we use at the CSU for financing. So if people will bear with me, I will first read out all the proposed changes, and then if it can be seconded, and then I'll motivate for the changes, hopefully in a concise way, but there are many. I should have maybe printed some out for people.
So read them out,
okay.
then get a second, and then motivate.
Yeah,
great.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one comes from Books 3, Clubs Funding. So to change Standing Regulation 108, so in order to qualify for funding, groups must have filled out the registration form completely, have 3 or more executives, all of which have signed the club's contract. That's the new regulation. And then in section E, have submitted a detailed budget within timeframes set by the vice president in charge of clubs and had said budget approved by clubs and space committee. Section B, 109, is any subsidy operating cost has absolutely no obligation to reflect any amounts allocated in previous years. And the newest part is going to be except for external funding submitted to the CSU by the club. Section F, the CSU will not subsidize food, lodging, transportation, etc. for trips/conferences. The new part added, nor membership fees or any or other types of royalties to umbrella organization that a CSU club is an affiliate of. Section G, no student union club funding may be used to subsidize the purchase of alcohol by student clubs. The new section is unless as a gift to a guest speaker for an event limited to 1 bottle per person. Maybe we should start with that, and then I'll go into the other changes. Does that make sense?
Does that mean you want to do multiple motions? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. I think that'll be easier, because if I start going into other sections, people are going to forget, you know?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So...
Jeremy? Okay, both the second. Great. Care to motivate then, or...?
Sure. I mean, they're all pretty straightforward. I mean, the club's contract is a new thing that we started using this year. It's very helpful. It basically is, it mainly consists of the club's Book 3 standing regulations. So it's just showing the clubs exactly what standing regulations pertain to them. So I think that's important. Also, the thing about adding the approval of the Clubs and Space Committee, I mean, I suppose it was sort of implied, but it's good to have it explicitly written in our regulations. External funding submitted to the CSU by the clubs. Some clubs have events where they actually generate revenue. So if they've made $1,000 revenue from an event that they did, I feel like that was their effort. And so we shouldn't just be cutting them off and not allowing that to roll over. And with the new clubs, with the new restricted fund accounting, that will definitely be a possibility. And then membership fees or types of royalties to umbrella organizations. I mean, there are some CSU clubs that are affiliated with larger international organizations. That's totally fine and great. But the CSU doesn't necessarily only want to fund that club as it pertains to their membership fees. So if they have membership fees that they have to pay to their umbrella, then maybe they can do a fundraising event. And then the last one is about the purchase of alcohol by student clubs. It came up a few times this year, and it just sort of made sense to add it as a standing regulation that you can give bottles of wine as gifts to guest speakers. That's it.
Great, thank you. Do we have a speaker list? Questions or comments about these regulations to be approved?
Just to be a stickler, it says bottles, but doesn't specify what kind of bottles. Is that an issue at all?
That's true. No. I mean, hopefully they don't want to buy them a bottle of, like, liquor, I suppose. But, no, but I'll make a note, and if it needs to be changed or specified, then the Clubs and Space Committee could look into it.
Alright, well, if there's nothing further, then we can vote to approve. Alright, is anybody opposed to the adoption of these modifications to standing regs? Keeping in mind that it's the first of a few more that Heather's going to mention. Okay, if not, then that's adopted unanimously. Okay, Heather, do you want to continue?
Yep. Okay, so this is from Book 4, Finances and Internal Administrative Affairs, from Chapter 1, General Provisions. So there are 4 standing regulations at the beginning, which I think should all be struck because they do not apply. So one is about, the first one is for the purposes of this book, what a contract shall mean: a formal hand-signed agreement between student union and a legal entity. So this is like defining what a contract is, and it doesn't pertain to our actual operationalization or the procedures for contracts. We also have a separate section later on in the standing regulations about contracts. The second one is about handwritten checks. All of CSU's checks are printed from the accountant or GM's computer after being registered in our accounting system. We actually have no manual checkbook even to make handwritten checks with, so that's redundant. And then the last 2 are about financial regulations, policies, or other instruments of council, that they should be forwarded. They should be forwarded to all employees whose duties as outlined in the collective agreement include the application of financial policy or carrying out of financial transactions. The only staff that actually apply financial policy are the general manager and the accountant, both of whom are not unionized employees or are part of the collective agreement. So maybe we can do that, and then we'll do 2 more sections. So that's under general provisions. Oh, there's the last one. Standing Regulation 120, should any payment exceed the amount allocated to a particular budget line, the accountant, instead of saying the bookkeeper, we've now hired an accountant, and so we'll just replace the word bookkeeper with accountant.
Okay, so is there a seconder to approve the motion to approve everything that Heather has just listed off, these last few provisions? Matthew, okay. Heather, do you want to speak a little further?
No, I already said it.
Okay, great. So,
Yeah.
speakers list. I hope that nobody feels rushed. I realize the tone might be that, but let me please take your time to ask whatever questions you might have. Okay, well, if there's no discussion, then we can proceed to a vote. Is anyone opposed to the motion to approve these modifications to the regulations that Heather just named off? If not, that can pass unanimously. Okay, great.
Okay, we're continuing on to Chapter 2, Major Accounting Practices. So in Standing Regulation 121-D, all restricted funds must only be used for the purpose stated in the resolution which approved its collection. So once again, I mean, it's a definition of the main principle behind restricted fund accounting, which has no bearing on our actual operational protocol. And further to this, the resolution of the creation of the HOJO and LIC funds that happened just last March was not coupled with a statement of resolutions. Their purposes are implied in their title. The next one is number 123. Each fund shall have its own chart of accounts in the student union's accounting software. This was discussed by the finance department at length, but finally determined unnecessary and overly cumbersome as an accounting mechanism. For the current system, which already has mechanisms in place in order to account for the different budget lines under each fund, is sufficient. This additional tool is not necessary and would take a lot of labor to institute and maintain, not to mention potentially having to buy more license agreements for our accounting software. Chapter 3, Signing Authority and Signing Officers, Standing Regulation 128. All contracts require the signature of 2 signing officers, and we want to add, with the exception of honorariums under $500, in bracket, i.e. performance, guest speakers, workshop leaders, etc., close brackets, which can be signed off by the authorized approver. So honorariums under $500, which were sometimes determined or switched around last minute during this past year, were difficult to get signed by the signing authorities. As they are such low amounts and they have less government regulations in their application, the authorized approver, who will most likely be at the event, would be more practical. Signing Regulation 134, all signing officers, including the president, if appointed, shall be responsible for arranging a 1-hour weekly meeting with the general manager. We want to strike general manager and change it to VP Finance, because it's always the VP Finance that meets with the signing authorities to sign checks and contracts. So it follows that this meeting shall be arranged between the VP Finance, not the GM, and the signing officer following their appointment. For the purposes of this meeting, the general manager shall take the place of the VP Finance when necessary. So it's just a reversal of all those. Standing Regulation 135, the general manager shall email the chair of council for every meeting a signing officer fails to attend. I mean, this has never happened in practice throughout the year. They always, like all the signing authorities, always eventually come to the office during the week if they miss the usual signing time. Otherwise, no actual checks would ever go out of CSU. And there's a next following regulation that actually outlines the mechanism for real accountability, which I'll just read it out even though there was no changes. It says, should any signing officer fail to arrange a meeting or fail to attend multiple meetings with the VP Finance, the signing officer may be removed by a simple majority vote of council. Okay, let's do this. And then we'll move on to more clubs, and then we're done.
Okay. Yeah, Ben?
I was just
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry. Speaker list is open.
That last one, they get voted off by council.
Yeah.
Is there something in there saying that a new person would be appointed at that council meeting? Would that happen?
No, this just says the following says any signing officer facing such a removal shall be given a minimum notice of 5 days before the meeting of council at which the removal is to be considered, with such notice indicating the alleged causes for removal, including the specifics of charges and any evidence. So it doesn't say that, but we could add that.
Ben, no follow-up?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. It might be a good idea to just explicitly say that the agenda item shall be called something, which implies the removal and then the appointment of another officer.
Okay.
Just so that, anyways, just to ensure that it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like making notes of these changes, and then I'm gonna give it to the new finance committee, who can then put them in place, because all the ones that we're discussing here now, like, they were sent out at the appropriate time and stuff. So okay, more questions?
Okay, now we can proceed to a vote. Is anyone opposed to the motion to approve these standing regulation changes? Okay, now that could be deemed unanimous. Heather, did you have other?
Yeah, I have more. I'm sorry. Okay, Chapter 5, Clubs and Clubs-Related Provisions. Standing Regulation 179, I'd like to completely repeal. So the standing regulation says that clubs registered with the student union may have a bank account only under an external bank account only under the following conditions: that the bank account exists as a sub-account under profile of student union's bank accounts, monthly bank statements are sent to the GM, who will forward a copy to the club, and the signing officers of the bank accounts are the same signing officers as the student union. So we discussed this a lot with the VP clubs, the president, the general manager, and got a legal opinion from our lawyer about where the threshold of CSU's responsibility lies when it comes to clubs funding, and it was recommended to take out these regulations. These mechanisms are vague, arduous, impractical, and don't reflect the reality. CSU's responsibilities lie and should focus on the legitimacy of the original receipts and direct invoices that are reimbursed and paid by the CSU to which we are liable, meaning managing clubs' internal accounts and not external. So then Standing Regulation 171 reads the club's administrator's salary and benefits shall be deducted from club's fund, and it should be changed to the club's director, because that's their job title in the collective agreement. Standing Regulation 172, the club's administrator shall track the allocated budget expenses and revenue of each club on a per project basis. I want to repeal that entire one because the club director does not participate in club's funding whatsoever, and it's actually in their collective agreement that they don't do that. Standing Regulation 173, the VP clubs and internal shall be the exclusive approver for all transactions on clubs-wide internal budget lines. So this refers to budget lines for clubs orientation, clubs fair, clubs other expenses. 174 is any requisition submitted by a club must include the signature of the club's 2 signing officers, must be a pre-approved expense in their detailed budget, must include all original itemized receipts, and must be at least $10. And then standing regulation 177, an end-of-year report shall be created not by the club's administrator but by the accountant, which includes for each club the accumulated revenue that was available for use by the club, the revenue and expenses accumulated for each project, and the revenue that will be available to the club in the following year.
Great. Seconder? Okay, Jeremy. Speakers list?
Can you just repeat that $10 one again?
Yep. Any requisition submitted by a club must include the signature of the 2 club signing officers, must be a pre-approved expense in their detailed budget, must include all original itemized receipts, and must be at least $10.
So each receipt has to be $10, or the total purchase has to be?
No, the accumulation, yeah. Because we did a couple, I think we issued a check this year for $1.43, and checks cost more than that for us to produce. And so they can just couple it with their other ones, and then we'll do it up.
Okay, great. We proceed to a vote then if there's no further discussion. Anyone opposed to the motion? Okay, great. That's unanimously approved.
Okay. There is a chapter, it's chapter 6 in the finance book. It's called Advocacy Fund and Advocacy Related Provisions. There are 2 standing regulations, and they should both be repealed as well as the entire chapter. The standing regulations read, the designated approver for all advocacy-related expenses shall be the VP Academic and Advocacy. 179 reads, the Advocacy Fund shall include all transactions related to the Advocacy Center, the Legal Information Clinic, and the Housing and Job Bank. So that one is obviously repealed because now the LIC and HOJO are their own fund in this new model of fund accounting that we're following. And also the one before that about the about advocacy expenses going through the VP Academic and Advocacy. We followed this year, and like the VP Academic and Advocacy, they have more of a supervisory role to the coordinators and staff of the CSU service centers. They don't necessarily track their budgets. That's the role of the VP Finance and the rest of the finance department. And to put it in this standing regulation that the VP Finance and the finance department would track this budget is redundant because that's what they do. So I think we'll do that, and then I'll have one last thing.
Okay, for the seconder. Jeremy. Speakers list. Okay, we can proceed to a vote. If there's no discussion, anyone opposed to the motion? Great, that's unanimous then. And then we take it away one more time.
Last one. Okay, so chapter 8, section 2, requisitions, standing regulation 192. A requisition form shall be used for all payments which are reimbursed to an individual. We want to strike the rest of it that says or directly remitted to a legal entity. We do direct invoice payments to a legal entity, but they do not require to have a check requisition with it. For example, when we do like our monthly telephone payments to Allstream for like all the phones in the clubs, it's only me that approves it, and it would be silly to put a check requisition sheet on top of every monthly phone bill that we have. Standing regulation 193 says every requisition form or direct invoice must have at least the following information. It didn't have the direct invoice in there before, but we in fact use direct invoices all the time, so we want to add that in. And then standing regulation 195. The VP Finance shall submit the following supporting documents to every meeting of the Financial Committee. A, the budget reflecting the current allocated amounts and actuals. B, the transaction list as per the accounting software. And then we want to strike C, which was the collection of supporting documents, as that is not specific at all. It's just vague. Chapter 9, Student Union Accounts. So we have 2 standing regulations that actually stipulate the current bank accounts of the Student Union. So these need to be changed to update and show all the actual real accounts now that we are following this fund. So the bank account of Student Union shall be operating checking, operating savings, health and dental insurance checking, health and dental savings, and an investment account for the Student Space Accessible Education and Legal Contingency Fund. And then standing regulation 203, the internal accounts of the Student Union shall be operating, health and dental fees, clubs, advocacy fees, HOJO, LIC, FIC, and the SILC. And we repealed the CFS because we no longer have that account, the IAC because that will be closed, and the Student Center. Whew, that's it.
Okay, great. Seconder, Marcus. Speakers list. That's good.
Yeah. For the first part, What about if a club or has a workshop from an organization, then someone would have to pay it up front? Like you couldn't pay to an organization, it's only an individual?
No, you can pay to an organization.
Okay, could you reread it?
About direct invoice payments?
Mhm.
So it says a requisition form shall be used for all payments which are reimbursed to an individual. Is that what you mean?
Okay, yeah. Because then afterwards you said to remove.
To remove the directly remitted to a legal entity. So if a club, for example, wants to pay an organization, the club needs to have a check requisition that's on top of it because their authorized signing officers need to sign off on it. So then the only things that can come without a check requisition are things that are like monthly, like regular payments of this main CSU office, like phone bills and legal fees and these sorts of things. Do you have a question?
Okay, there's no further questions, you can proceed to a vote. Anyone opposed to? Oh.
I have just one point. On the 195, you strike the final C, but I think the word and should also be taken out from B because there's nothing on the back.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's just like
Fair thing. Send that to policy committee.
Okay, great. So we can proceed to a vote then. No further questions? Anyone opposed to the motion? Great, so it's adopted unanimously.
Thank you. Thanks for
Heather.
that. Thanks for bearing with me through that horrible, painful process. Anyways.
I think it was okay. So that covers the point for financial regulation changes. The next would be point 5, chairperson and secretary bonuses. If you folks want to talk about this point. I should say, since it concerns Caitlin and I, you might want to appoint somebody interim in order to chair and take minutes for this meeting. Ben?
Take the minutes?
I'm kidding.
I move to appoint myself as the chair.
Okay. Seconder?
Temporarily.
Okay, seconded by Matthew. Is anyone opposed to Ben chairing for the duration of this agenda item point? Okay, great.
Okay.
Ben, you are now chairperson.
Okay, if somebody can maybe move to go to closed session. Great. We need a seconder. Perfect. Oh, yeah, sorry. All those in favor of going to closed session? Cool. Anybody opposed? Awesome. No abstentions. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, just because, was someone appointed for minute taking?
I'll need to do that.
there's closed session.
You only take the motions, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just someone keep track of the motions?
Yeah, we'll get it.
Okay, cool.
I don't wanna know what you guys
By the decisions made in closed session.
Okay,
Second.
great. Seconded Chloe. Is anyone opposed to ratifying the motion closed session? Okay, great. So that passes unanimously. I believe that. Oh yeah, Ben.
I'm just gonna. It's not like a private thing, unless you want it. Is it a private thing
Caitlin, how do you feel about that?
What, private?
for the bonuses?
What was decided on?
Well, I mean, don't we have to check wreck them?
The bonus?
Oh, you mean not private? Oh, I don't care. I thought you meant private from us.
Oh yeah.
That was like.
We just told them ERs, like it's not a big deal, I don't think. So
I don't.
cool.
Sure,
Well, we got the
comfortable.
same as we got. So,
Okay, great.
so it's 9.6 for them as well. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Very much.
All right.
Oh, thank you. Jazz hands. Well, the next point was going to be point 6. However, it sounded like that was maybe not something to be discussed for today. Is there either a motion to table or to address it? I think, Ben, this is your point. We're at Cusicore right now.
Yeah, I'm just table.
Okay, motion to table.
Unless, actually, can I rescind it?
Sure. No one seconded.
How long can people stay around? Because we could just. No, but the issue is that technically we're supposed to have the AGM for Cusicore in May, and takes. I mean, technically we could call a Cusicore meeting as long as we have quorum, but it's either tomorrow or the next day or today, and we could just get out of the way today. There's not really that much if people are able to stick around for a little while longer.
Define a little while.
Maybe like 45 minutes max kind of thing for the meeting.
Sounds deadly.
Is it possible to suspend Robert's rules and put the greenhouse first if we are to do that?
Oh, we don't start yet.
So
Are you okay with this, Matt, what we're doing here?
I mean, generally the amendments, amending a special agenda meeting is not the best. However, I think given the circumstances, it seems reasonable.
No, sorry, I meant like with us kind of just.
Oh, you mean just like a roundtable discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to get sorted out, so that's fine. It's been discussed in this way.
We wouldn't have this meeting immediately, we'd call it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I move to have the QScore annual general meeting immediately following this special council meeting.
Okay, so that is a motion to hold the Q4 shareholders meeting?
Yeah, it's the annual shareholders meeting.
The annual shareholders meeting at the adjournment of this special council meeting?
After a 10-minute recess.
After a 10-minute recess, okay, so before agenda, before the adjournment. Okay, is there a second to that motion? Or does anyone have any questions about that first? Because a lot just got said.
So we're gonna recess for 10 minutes and then have a meeting for the shareholders of CUSA Corp, which is just us, right?
Yeah, well, this would be after the last agenda item point, which is the
Oh.
greenhouse funding.
Okay. All right, I see now.
But information would it be right after, or would it be during? How does it work? Okay, after, because it's after the agenda.
It's a new meeting.
So the thought.
Is quorum the same for this court?
Quorum is as long as CSU is present. Honestly, it's kind of ambiguous. Like, technically, I could count as quorum if we were to be really strict about bylaws, but as long as there's 1/3 of council, I don't think that we should use that I would count as quorum. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So the 1/3 of council to either. So it's the same. Yeah.
Because
Okay, so-
TJ has voting rights downstairs, so he wants, I'm just speaking for him, he wants to go back down after this meeting, just throwing that out there.
Okay. So procedurally, we're still waiting on a second for Ben's motion, which is to hold the shareholders meeting.
I don't really know. I don't know if it's probably not that big of a deal to have one next month, but I haven't checked with this because I assumed that we were going to have it today. I really don't imagine it's going to be a big deal if we have it next month also, so if like TJ really has to leave. Then we don't have to do it. That's what I'm saying. Maybe. But I honestly haven't checked with her. But it's technically our subsidiary. So if we don't make an issue out of it.
You need a decisive leader. Just make a decision for us.
Well, at this point, the motion requires a second, so
Okay.
somebody else but Ben has to be decisive.
Oh, all right. Then yes, I'll second. I thought we were waiting for him to come up with a different date. All right, I'll second it.
Okay. So it's been seconded. Ben, do you want to motivate me further? Again, we're talking about how holding an annual shareholders meeting after the agenda point greenhouse funding, before the adjournment of this meeting.
Well, if we don't have quorum, and if we can't maintain quorum, then vote against this. And if we can maintain quorum, then vote for it. That is what my suggestion is. So I guess the discussion will be about whether or not people have to leave. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So the speakers list then. Marcus?
So I want to go down to the ASFA AGM. John does, TJ does, quite a few people do, I'm assuming. I'm not sure how easy it would be to hold on to quorum, but what are our other options besides having it today?
I might need to pester everybody one more time over the next 2 days after I check to make sure that it's not a big deal, that it's not happening in May and would happen in June. So.
Seems reasonable.
Okay, John?
I'm going to call a question.
Question has been called. I mean, there was no one else on the speakers list. So the vote then will be, or actually it's a vote to call the question. Is anyone opposed to the calling of the question?
It's a seconder.
Okay, it's a seconder. Thank you, Nick. Is anyone opposed to the calling of the question? Okay, great. Question's been called then. Those in favor of holding the CUSA Corp annual shareholders meeting after the point greenhouse funding for the adjournment of this meeting, please raise your placards. This might be a contentious one.
It's also anyone opposed?
Wait, there's.
No, I don't want to go by unanimity just because it
Yeah.
sounded like there were some diverging opinions there. So all those in favor of holding the shareholders meeting of the motion, could you please raise your placards? Okay, those opposed? And abstentions? Okay, well that's defeated. That's defeated then, and the speakers list on the point of Cusacor is now open.
Where did Heather?
Ben?
Not sure where Heather went, but we do need to approve a quick expense from the Silk Fund. Heather has the specific numbers. I don't have them right now with me. I know the general numbers. But the substance of that approval would be to just expense to the Silk Fund the costs incurred for the business plan for the new Reggies, including the market study that was done. It's give or take $15,000. That's how much it cost in total with everybody. But Heather's not here with the specific number, so I'm gonna text her or call her really quickly. Sorry. I think she thought we were gonna show this much.
Some awkward chips you got there.
Okay, motion on table, seconded Matthew.
Oh.
Chloe, sorry, Chloe holding Matthew's placard. Is anyone opposed to tabling this agenda item point until after the point greenhouse funding? Okay, so we can proceed to that point right away then. Jessica, what's yours?
Yeah, I have a motion, so I'll start with that, and I'll explain. Whereas a feasibility study for Loyola Greenhouse has been conducted and a vertical gardening greenhouse project, immobilization cost assessment, and Concordia University varying cost report has been conducted. Whereas a business plan is necessary to show potential funders and to ensure that all potential avenues are explored before moving forward. Whereas students voted in favor of the CSU continuing to prioritize the development of a Loyola student greenhouse as a student space initiative. Be resolved that the CSU allocate a maximum of $15,000 for the Loyola Greenhouse Business Plan development to be taken from the CELIC Fund. Student space accessibility. Again, never pronounce it.
Is that the second?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, motivate.
Yeah, so we started looking over what the next steps are for the greenhouse, and we have a lot of the information that we need to move forward. It just seems, though, to have a full idea of what the funding is going to be behind it. We need to have a business plan. So we can start fundraising somewhat prior to with the numbers that we already have, but moving forward, we're going to need more of a business plan to have the full picture of the financial requirements. So yeah, the $15,000 would be for that, developed over the summer. We've started developing a timeline, and yeah, so the business plan and the fundraising should be done throughout the summer. So this is why we kind of need the money now.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, any comments?
Nope, I'm just getting ready to say.
Okay, I mean, if there's no discussion on the point, proceed to a vote then. Is anyone opposed to the motion? If not, we can accept it unanimously. Great, all right. Thanks, Jessica.
Point of information?
Yep.
Is that the last point?
Well, we're now returning to the point of Q score, which was tabled.
Heather said she was coming, and she's just pulling up the numbers. I don't know how long this can take.
Okay, so apparently Heather's on her way. But yes, that would be the last point.
Okay, so we're just waiting on Heather?
Yep.
Do you want me to give you the position minutes? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. Just the motion.
It was just the motion anyways, yeah.
Who motioned it?
Yep.
Heather motion.
I have it. I'll just, is it okay if I send it to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right, so we're back on the Cusick point, Heather.
Hi. So okay. So I motion that the Cusick business plan comes out of the Silk Fund in the total amount of $8,977.70.
Okay, is there a seconder to that? Marcus? Motivate, Heather?
We did a business plan. It's for Reggie's space. That is a student space. It should come out of our student space fund.
Great, thank you. Speakers list. Ben?
I just moved to to make the wording a bit more specific, for the business plan expense, or the business plan costs to be expensed from the Silk Fund. Just because the motions are usually written down word for word.
Yeah, right. I'll take it as friendly.
Well, does anyone have any objection with being friendly? Okay, excellent. So that's amended. Any questions?
You said it's coming from the Cusick business plan?
Yeah.
So Reggie's is still part of Cusick with the business plan?
Currently, yes.
Ben?
It doesn't imply anything. Like what you're thinking. It doesn't mean.
I got enough information.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's exhausted the speakers list, so we can proceed to a vote. Is anyone opposed to the motion? If not, we can adopt it unanimously. Okay, excellent, adopted. That concludes the agenda. It takes us to the point of adjournment. Marcus. Is there a seconder for adjournment? Ben? Anyone opposed to adjournment? Thanks very much, everybody. Be real patient.
Thank you.
See you guys.